Korean Mafia boss in disguise asks for a steak. The waitress gives him a note that paralyzes him. On the 23rd of November 2024, in the coastal town of Hainam, a foreign waitress left behind a simple blue napkin that would later be remembered as the turning point of a night that should have been ordinary. Nothing during that rainy shift suggested that her quiet decision would alter the path of a man everyone thought they understood. The twist came when it became clear that the weary traveler was not who he appeared to be, and that her timid gesture carried far more weight than she ever imagined. To this day, many still wonder how something so small could trigger such a profound change. Follow the channel, like the video, and comment where you are watching from. The rain falls like 1,000 whispered secrets against the fogged windows of Hwaryohan, each drop carrying the weight of prayers unanswered. Inside, beneath the amber glow of traditional lanterns that cast dancing shadows across walls adorned with calligraphy scrolls, Maria Nandali moves between tables like a ghost, trying to remember how to be human. Her hands shake as she sets down a plate of galbi before a businessman who doesn't even glance her way. The tremor isn't from exhaustion, though her body aches from 12-hour shifts that blend into one endless marathon of survival. It's from the text message still burning in her pocket, received 3 hours ago from a hospital in Manila. Your mother's condition has worsened. Payment needed for continued treatment. 23 years old, and Maria feels ancient. Her reflection in the restaurant's ornate mirrors shows a young woman with dark circles beneath eyes that once held dreams. Hair pulled back so tightly it makes her temples throb. An apron stained with the evidence of other people's abundance. She came to Seoul 2 years ago with a work visa and a promise to herself. 6 months to save money, then back home. But Seoul has a way of turning months into years, and promises into distant memories. The Hwaryohan sits in Gangnam, where the wealthy come to see and be seen, where a single cut of Hanwoo beef costs more than Maria sends home in a week. The restaurant's name means splendid meat, and everything about it screams luxury, from the imported Italian marble floors to the crystal chandeliers that seem to mock her with their careless brilliance. Table 7 needs more banchan. Manager Choi Hyung-soo snaps as he passes, his breath carrying the sour smell of soju he thinks no one notices. And smile more. You look like someone died. Someone might be dying, Maria thinks, but she bites her tongue until she tastes copper and forces her lips into the shape of gratitude. Yes, Manager Choi. She's halfway to the kitchen when the door opens. The sound of rain suddenly floods the dining room, a torrential roar that makes every head turn. And there, framed in the doorway like an apparition conjured from the storm itself, stands a man who doesn't belong. His coat is threadbare, hanging from shoulders that seem to carry the weight of mountains. Water drips from his hair, creating small pools on Manager Choi's precious marble. His shoes, worn beyond repair, the kind you see on street corners in Dongdaemun, leave muddy prints with each step. But it's his eyes that make Maria's breath catch in her throat. They're empty. Not cruel, not cold, just profoundly, devastatingly empty, like windows into rooms where all the furniture has been removed and only echoes remain. The restaurant falls silent. A woman in a Chanel dress physically recoils. A man in a custom suit whispers something to his companion, and they both laugh. That particular laugh of those who've never known what it means to have nowhere to go. Manager Choi's face flushes the color of gochujang. He moves toward the man with the purposeful stride of someone about to remove an inconvenience. But before he can speak, the stranger's voice cuts through the silence. Quiet, but with a strange quality that makes everyone listen. I'd like a table, please. His Korean is perfect, but there's something in the cadence that speaks of time spent in places far from here. Manager Choi's lip curls. Sir, I think you might be more comfortable at a table, the man repeats, and this time there's steel beneath the silk. For one, the tension stretches like a wire pulled too tight. Maria watches, frozen between the kitchen and the dining room, as Manager Choi's face goes through several transformations. He's calculating. She can see it. Calculating the cost of a scene versus the cost of allowing this situation to continue. Finally, with a smile that doesn't reach his eyes, Manager Choi gestures to the worst table in the restaurant, the one by the kitchen door, where the sounds of clattering pots and shouted orders drown out all conversation. Of course, sir. Right this way. The man doesn't react to the insult. He simply follows, leaves a trail of rainwater like breadcrumbs marking his path, and sits down with the careful precision of someone whose body hurts more than he'll admit. Maria finds herself assigned to his table. Of course she is. Manager Choi wouldn't waste one of the prettier servers on this situation. As she approaches, menu in hand, she notices things others might miss. The way the man's fingers, rough, scarred, but meticulously clean, rest on the table with absolute steadiness. The posture that seems casual, but speaks of rigid discipline. The subtle way his eyes track every movement in the restaurant without appearing to look at anything at all. "Good evening," she says softly, in Korean. "May I bring you water?" He looks up at her, and for just a moment, something flickers in those empty eyes. Recognition? Not of her specifically, but of something she represents. Kindness, perhaps. Or simply the acknowledgement of shared humanity. "Water would be kind," he replies. Then, as she turns to leave, he adds, "What's the most expensive item on your menu?" Maria freezes. She turns back slowly, certain she misheard. "I'm sorry? The most expensive dish. What is it?" Her heart begins to pound. She glances toward Manager Choi, who's watching from across the room with the expression of a cat that spotted a mouse. The Imperial Hanwoo set. It's 580,000 won. Nearly $500. More than Maria makes in 2 weeks. The man nods once, decisively. "I'll have that, please." The words drop into the restaurant like stones into still water. Ripples of shocked whispers spread from table to table. Someone laughs, high, cruel, disbelieving. Maria's hands begin to shake again, but this time for a different reason. She sees something in this moment that terrifies her. A test, perhaps, or a trap, or maybe just a man so far beyond caring about the opinions of others that he's willing to order food he might not be able to pay for, just to prove a point she doesn't understand. "Sir," she says quietly, leaning in slightly so only he can hear. "That's a very expensive—" "I know what it costs," he interrupts gently. His eyes meet hers, and for the first time since he entered, she sees something behind the emptiness. Pain. Ancient, bone-deep pain. "Please place the order." She nods, her throat tight, and walks to the kitchen on legs that feel like they're made of water. Manager Choi intercepts her before she reaches the pass. His smile is a predator's smile now, all teeth and no warmth. "So our distinguished guest wants the Imperial set?" "Yes, manager." "Interesting." He glances back at the man, who sits perfectly still, hands folded on the table, staring at nothing. "Very interesting." He turns to the head chef, Park, who's watching through the kitchen window. They exchange a look, a split second of understanding that makes Maria's stomach drop. "Chef Park," Manager Choi says loudly enough for several nearby servers to hear. "Our guest has ordered the Imperial set. Let's make sure he gets exactly what he deserves." The words hang in the air like a noose. Chef Park nods slowly, then turns to the walk-in freezer. But he doesn't go to the section where the pristine cuts of Hanwoo rest in temperature-controlled glory. Instead, he goes to the back, the very back, where Maria knows, everyone who works here knows, they keep the cuts that should have been thrown away days ago. The meat that's turned slightly, that's lost its color, that carries the particular smell of flesh just beginning its journey toward decay. "No," Maria whispers, but the word dies in her throat. Manager Choi turns to her, and his eyes are absolutely cold. "Is there a problem, Maria?" She wants to speak, wants to scream, wants to grab that spoiled meat and throw it in the trash where it belongs. But she thinks of her mother in that hospital bed, of her little brother who needs money for university, of the visa that could be revoked with a single phone call from a disgruntled employer. "No, manager," she hears herself say. "No problem." "Good." He pats her shoulder, a gesture that feels like a threat. "Remember, Maria, we all have our place here. Some of us remember that better than others." She watches as Chef Park prepares the spoiled meat, covering its sins with expensive garnishes and aromatic sauces. Watches as he arranges it on the restaurant's finest plate, making poison look like luxury, and Maria stands there, caught between two versions of herself, the one who needs this job to survive, and the one who still remembers what it feels like to look in a mirror without shame. The rain continues to fall outside, each drop now sounding less like secrets and more like accusations. Time moves differently when you're watching something terrible unfold in slow motion. Maria stands frozen beside the kitchen pass, watching Chef Park arrange the final garnish on the plate. a delicate spray of microgreens that looks like spring itself, hiding the rot beneath. The sauce gleams under the kitchen lights, dark and glossy, masking the grayish tint of meat that should have met the trash 3 days ago. Her heart hammers against her ribs like a caged bird, throwing itself against bars. Every instinct screams at her to do something, say something, but her voice has abandoned her. She thinks of her mother's frail hands, the way they trembled the last time they video called. Thinks of her brother's acceptance letter to university, still pinned to the wall of their small apartment in Manila, waiting for tuition money that may never come. "Order up," Chef Park announces, his voice carrying the casual indifference of someone who's made peace with small cruelties long ago. He slides the plate onto the pass with a metallic scrape that sounds like a jail door closing. Manager Choi appears beside her, so close she can feel the heat of his body. "Well?" His breath smells like expensive liquor and cheap decisions. "Our guest is waiting." Maria's hands reach for the plate before her mind fully agrees to the action. The ceramic is warm against her palms, body temperature, like holding something that was recently alive. She lifts it, and the weight feels heavier than it should, as though the plate carries more than just food. As she pushes through the kitchen door, the dining room seems to have grown larger, the distance to that corner table stretching into miles. Every step feels like a betrayal. The other diners have returned to their conversations, their laughter, their comfortable lives. But she can feel their peripheral attention, the way people watch accidents unfold while pretending not to look. The man, she still doesn't know his name, sits exactly as she left him. Hands folded, posture perfect, eyes distant, as though he's somewhere far from this place, perhaps somewhere better, or perhaps somewhere much worse. 3 tables away, a woman in pearls whispers something to her companion. They both glance at the stranger, then laugh, that particular soul laugh that sounds like breaking glass. Maria's throat constricts. Her vision blurs slightly at the edges. She's carried hundreds of plates in this restaurant, thousands maybe, but none have felt like this, like carrying evidence, like being complicit. She reaches his table, and the man looks up. For just a moment, their eyes meet, and Maria sees something she didn't notice before, a profound exhaustion that goes beyond the physical, the kind of tired that sleep can't fix, that rest can't touch, the weariness of someone who's seen too much and felt too little for too long. "Your Imperial Hanwoo set, sir," she says, and hates how steady her voice sounds, how professional, how perfectly she plays her role in this small tragedy. She sets the plate down, and as she does, something inside her breaks, not dramatically, not with the sound of shattering crystal, just a quiet crack, like ice forming on a window. Her hands are shaking now, visibly, uncontrollably. The man notices. Of course he notices. Those empty eyes miss nothing. "Are you all right?" he asks softly, and the kindness in his voice, after everything, he's asking if she's all right, nearly destroys her completely. The word catches in her throat. She glances back toward Manager Choi, who watches from across the room with the expression of someone waiting for a punchline. Chef Park leans against the kitchen doorframe, arms crossed, smirking. Maria's mind races through scenarios like shuffling cards. She could walk away, pretend she saw nothing, knew nothing, keep her job, keep her visa, keep sending money home. Her mother would never know. Her brother would never know. Only she would carry this, one more weight added to shoulders already bent beneath the burden of survival. Or, the word appears in her mind like a lifeboat in storm-dark water. Or she could do something monumentally stupid, something that might cost her everything, something that matters. Her hand moves before her courage can abandon her. "Sir, I need to get something. Just one moment, please. Don't start yet." She turns and walks, too quickly, her footsteps sharp against marble, to the server station. Her hands fumble through drawers with the desperate clumsiness of panic. Napkins. White napkins. Where are the... There. In the back of the bottom drawer, left over from a corporate event months ago, a single blue napkin, different from all the others, unmistakable. She grabs a pen, her hands shaking so violently she can barely hold it. The tip hovers over the napkin for an eternity compressed into seconds. What can she possibly write? What words carry enough weight to warn him, to save him, without destroying herself. Her hand moves almost without her permission, forming words in English, the language of desperate people finding each other across borders. "Please don't eat this. Trust me." She stares at what she's written. 4 years of English classes in Manila, and this is what she produces. Not eloquent, not clever, just honest, raw, and terrifyingly real. Behind her, she hears Manager Choi's footsteps approaching. She folds the napkin quickly, once, twice, and slips it into her apron pocket just as he reaches her. "Problem?" His voice carries an edge sharp enough to draw blood. "No, manager, just getting extra napkins." She forces a smile that feels like it might crack her face. "Our guest might need them." His eyes narrow, but he nods. "Good. Professional service. That's what we expect." Maria returns to the table on legs made of prayer and desperation. The man looks up as she approaches, and something in his expression shifts. A subtle change, like clouds passing over the moon. She sets down the water glasses she'd forgotten to bring earlier, buying herself seconds. Then, with hands that have stopped shaking through sheer force of will, she retrieves the blue napkin from her apron. She places it beside his plate, folded small, innocent, impossible to miss. Their eyes meet again. Maria sees the exact moment he registers that something is happening, something beyond the ordinary transaction of server and customer. His gaze drops to the blue napkin, then rises back to her face, searching. She doesn't nod, doesn't speak, just holds his gaze for 3 seconds that feel like 3 years, willing him to understand, to see, to trust. Then she turns and walks away before her nerve fails completely, before tears come, before the weight of what she's just done crushes her entirely. Behind her, she hears nothing. No sound of a plate being lifted, no scrape of fork against ceramic, just silence. And in that silence, Maria feels the trajectory of her entire life shifting, like a train switching tracks, one small choice sending her hurtling toward a destination she cannot yet see. The next 47 seconds feel like drowning in slow motion. Maria retreats to the server station, busying her hands with tasks that don't need doing, reorganizing menus already perfectly aligned, straightening chopsticks that sit in flawless rows. But her eyes, rebellious and disobedient, keep darting back to that corner table where the man sits motionless, the untouched plate before him like an altar offering to gods who've stopped listening. She watches as his hand moves, slowly, deliberately, and lifts the blue napkin. He unfolds it with the careful precision of someone diffusing an explosive, his eyes scanning the words she'd scrawled in desperation. His face reveals nothing, not surprise, not anger, not gratitude, just that same devastating emptiness, like looking into a well with no bottom. Then something shifts, a subtle tightening around his eyes, a slight pause in his breathing. He reads the note again, slower this time, and Maria sees his jaw clench almost imperceptibly. He folds the napkin, once, twice, 3 times, and slides it into his coat pocket with the reverence people usually reserve for photographs of the departed. Their eyes meet across the dining room. For a moment that exists outside of time, they're not server and customer, not wealthy and poor, not Korean and Filipino. They're just 2 people who've recognized something essential in each other, the willingness to risk everything for a stranger, the knowledge of what it costs to choose right over easy. He doesn't smile, doesn't nod, but something passes between them anyway, an understanding deeper than language, more binding than any contract. Manager Choi's voice shatters the moment like a hammer through glass. "Maria, table 12 needs attention." She tears her gaze away and moves mechanically through her duties, but every cell in her body remains attuned to that corner table. She's aware of him the way you're aware of thunder after lightning, waiting for the sound that must inevitably come. The rain outside intensifies, hammering against the windows with renewed fury. The dining room fills with the white noise of wealthy conversation, stock prices and vacation homes, designer brands and children at international schools. But underneath it all, Maria senses something else, a tension, a wrongness, like the air before an earthquake, when animals flee and birds fall silent. She's clearing table 8 when the door opens. 3 people enter, not together, but within seconds of each other, as though choreographed by an invisible hand. They don't speak to the hostess, don't wait to be seated. They simply arrive, and their presence changes the molecular structure of the room. The first is a woman in her 40s, wearing a black suit that probably costs more than Maria's entire year's salary. Her hair is pulled into a severe bun, her expression carved from marble. She scans the restaurant with eyes that catalog everything: exits, occupants, angles, threats. The second is a younger man, maybe 30, with wire-rimmed glasses, and the posture of someone who's learned to make himself invisible. He carries a leather portfolio under one arm and moves with the quiet efficiency of a chess piece being positioned on a board. The third is older, gray-haired, with the kind of weathered face that speaks of decades spent in rooms where important decisions are made behind closed doors. He wears a traditional hanbok, unusual for this restaurant, for this neighborhood, for this particular Tuesday night. They don't sit. They don't order. They simply position themselves at different points in the dining room, forming an invisible triangle with the stranger at its center. Maria's blood turns to ice water. Manager Choi has noticed too. His face, already flushed from soju, drains to the color of old paper. He straightens his tie with trembling fingers, smooths his hair, and starts moving toward the woman in black with the desperate cheerfulness of someone who knows he's already drowning. "Welcome to Hwar Yohan Gogi. May I—" The woman raises one hand, a gesture so subtle it barely qualifies as movement, and Manager Choi stops mid-sentence as though he's walked into an invisible wall. She doesn't look at him. Her eyes remain fixed on the stranger, who sits calmly, the poisoned meal untouched before him, the blue napkin safely tucked away. The dining room has fallen into an unnatural quiet. Conversations die mid-word. Chopsticks pause halfway to mouths. Even the kitchen sounds seem muted, as though the entire restaurant is holding its breath. Maria's hands clutch a water pitcher so tightly her knuckles turn white. She doesn't understand what's happening, but she feels it. The shift in power, the revelation of hidden hierarchies, the sudden understanding that nothing in this room is what it appeared to be. The stranger, Min Jun-hyuk, though she still doesn't know his name, sets down his napkin. Not the blue one, a white one from the table. He does this with theatrical slowness, each movement deliberate and weighted with meaning Maria can't quite decode. Then he stands. The sound of his chair scraping against marble echoes like a gunshot in the silence. Every eye in the restaurant watches as he reaches into his pocket and withdraws a wallet. Not the worn, threadbare thing Maria expected, but something else entirely. He places several bills on the table. Even from across the room, she can see their 50,000 won notes. More than enough to cover the meal he hasn't touched. When he speaks, his voice carries through the restaurant with the quiet authority of someone accustomed to being heard. "Thank you for your attention this evening." The words are polite, ordinary, but they land like stones dropped into still water, creating ripples that spread outward in waves of confusion and dawning comprehension. He turns to leave, and the three newcomers move in perfect synchronization, creating a pathway for him through the dining room, not touching him, not speaking to him, just accompanying, protecting, acknowledging. As he passes Maria's station, he pauses for the briefest moment, doesn't look at her, doesn't speak, just reaches into his pocket and places something on the counter beside her. The blue napkin. Then he's gone, the three strangers flowing out behind him like water following a current. The door closes with a soft click that somehow sounds deafening. For 5 heartbeats, the restaurant remains frozen in stunned silence. Then Manager Choi's phone rings. He fumbles it from his pocket with shaking hands, and even from across the room, Maria can hear the sharp, authoritative voice on the other end. She can't make out words, but she doesn't need to. She can read the story in Manager Choi's face, as color drains away and then floods back in blotches of panicked red. He looks up, directly at Maria, and for the first time since she started working here, she sees genuine fear in his eyes. Outside, through the rain-streaked windows, Maria glimpses something that makes her breath catch. A line of black cars, expensive, official-looking vehicles with tinted windows, pulling up to the curb one after another, like a funeral procession for something that hasn't quite died yet. The door opens again, and this time, the people who enter bring with them the weight of official consequence. They're dressed in business attire that speaks of government offices and corporate headquarters, the kind of clothing that announces authority without needing to shout. 6 of them in total, moving with the coordinated efficiency of a surgical team. They carry leather portfolios, tablets, and an air of grim purpose that transforms the restaurant's warm ambiance into something cold and clinical. The lead figure is a woman in her 50s, her silver hair cut in a sharp bob that frames a face carved from determination. She wears a navy suit with a small pin on the lapel, something official that Maria can't quite make out from this distance, but that makes several of the wealthy diners sit up straighter in their seats. "Good evening," the woman announces, her voice cutting through the murmur of confused conversations like a blade through silk. "I apologize for the interruption. My name is Inspector Yoon Mija from the Seoul Metropolitan Government Food Safety Division. We need to speak with the manager immediately regarding some regulatory concerns." The words land like a bomb, detonated in slow motion. Manager Choi stands frozen in the center of the dining room, his face cycling through emotions so quickly it's almost comical. Confusion, fear, anger, calculation, and finally, a desperate attempt at dignified composure. His hand still clutches his phone, knuckles white, as though it might somehow save him from whatever is about to unfold. Of course, Inspector Yoon." His voice cracks slightly on her name. He clears his throat, trying to reclaim some authority. "Perhaps we could discuss this in my office. I'm sure whatever concerns you have are simply, here will be fine," Inspector Yoon interrupts smoothly. She gestures to her team, who begin moving through the restaurant with purposeful precision. "We need to conduct an immediate inspection of your facilities. Standard procedure when we receive certain reports." The word reports hangs in the air like an accusation. Maria watches from her position by the server station, the blue napkin still resting where Jun Hyuk placed it, as though it might burn her if she touches it. Her heart pounds against her ribs so hard she's certain everyone can hear it. Around her, the other servers have frozen in various poses of confusion. Minji with a tray of banchan suspended mid-delivery, Youngsu with a wine bottle tilted at a permanent angle, Jiwon with her mouth slightly open, catching flies. The wealthy diners are reacting too. Some lean forward, hungry for drama the way only those insulated from real consequence can be. Others begin gathering their belongings, calculating the social cost of being associated with whatever scandal is unfolding. A few pull out their phones, already texting their networks, spreading gossip at the speed of fiber optics. "Inspector Yoon, I must protest," Manager Choi attempts, but his words evaporate as one of her team members emerges from the kitchen, holding something in a gloved hand. It's a clear evidence bag containing meat. Even from across the room, Maria can see its grayish tint, the way it sits in the bag like something shameful. "Manager Choi," Inspector Yoon says, her voice carrying the particular gentleness that precedes devastation. "Could you explain why your restaurant has been storing expired protein products in containers marked as current inventory? And why health inspection records show discrepancies between reported disposal dates and actual disposal dates spanning the last 14 months? The silence that follows is so complete that Maria can hear the rain against the windows, each drop a tiny drumbeat of judgment. Manager Choi's face transforms. The blood drains from his cheeks, leaving behind a waxy pallor that makes him look like a corpse that hasn't yet realized it's dead. His mouth opens, closes, opens again. No sound emerges. His eyes dart around the room, seeking escape or support or perhaps just someone to share the blame, and land briefly on Chef Park, who has materialized in the kitchen doorway looking equally stricken. There must be some mistake," Manager Choi finally manages, his voice barely above a whisper. "We run a reputable establishment. These accusations are supported by documentation, witness statements, and physical evidence," Inspector Yoon completes calmly. She nods to another team member, who produces a tablet and begins reading in a voice devoid of emotion. Violations include storage of expired food products, falsification of inspection records, improper temperature maintenance in cold storage units, and... The reader pauses, and Maria sees something flicker across their face, something that might be disgust or might be pity. Deliberate serving of compromised food products to customers. The last phrase detonates in the room like a grenade. Chairs scrape against marble as diners leap to their feet. A woman in Gucci gasps audibly. A man in a Hugo Boss suit demands answers in a voice shrill with outrage and barely concealed fear. Has he eaten here before? How many times? What has he consumed? Maria's legs feel like they might give out. She grips the counter for support, her mind racing. How do they know? How could they possibly know about tonight, about the spoiled meat, about... Her eyes drop to the blue napkin, still resting on the counter, and understanding crashes over her like a wave. The man, Junhyuk, the way those three strangers had watched him, the cars outside, the phone call that had drained color from Manager Choi's face. This wasn't random. This was orchestrated. This was deliberate. This was because she'd written 4 desperate words on a piece of blue paper. All personnel involved in food preparation and service will need to provide statements, Inspector Yoon continues, and her team begins moving through the restaurant, taking names, documenting everything with the methodical thoroughness of people who've done this many times before. Maria's hands begin to shake again as one of the inspectors approaches her, but before they can speak, she sees something that makes her breath stop entirely. Through the front window, visible despite the rain and the chaos inside, she glimpses Junhyuk. He hasn't left. He stands across the street, partially sheltered under an awning, watching the restaurant with that same empty expression. But as Maria stares, he does something unexpected. He lifts one hand to his chest, just briefly, just for a moment, and places it over his heart. Then he reaches into his pocket, withdraws the blue napkin, and raises it slightly. A salute, an acknowledgement, a thank you. Then he turns and disappears into one of the black cars, which pulls away into the night, red taillights bleeding into the rain like wounds. Maria realizes she's crying. When the tears started, she has no idea. They stream down her face, hot and sudden, carrying with them the weight of fear and relief, and something else she can't quite name. Manager Choi is being escorted to his office now, Inspector Yoon speaking to him in low, serious tones about cooperation and consequences. Chef Park sits on a chair in the corner, head in his hands, the picture of a man watching his career dissolve before his eyes. And Maria stands there, clutching a counter in a restaurant that will probably never reopen, having just lost the job that kept her mother alive and her brother in school, wondering if she's made the best decision of her life or the absolute worst. The blue napkin rests beside her hand, innocent and devastating, a small piece of paper that somehow shifted the weight of the entire world. 3 days pass like years. Maria spends them in her tiny goshiwon, a room barely larger than a closet, with walls so thin she can hear her neighbors breathing at night. She lies on the narrow bed that doubles as her couch, staring at the ceiling's water stains that look like maps of countries she'll never visit, and counts the money she has left. 2 months' rent, maybe 3 if she eats less. Her phone sits beside her, silent and accusing, full of messages from her mother she hasn't had the courage to answer. How do you explain that you chose morality over survival? That you traded your family's security for a stranger's safety? That you wrote 4 words on a napkin and watched your entire life collapse? The news outlets have picked up the story. Gangnam restaurant scandal trends on Naver for 2 days. Her phone buzzes constantly with messages from other servers, some supportive, most terrified about their own job prospects, all asking the same question. What happens now? Maria doesn't have an answer. She sits in her tiny Goshiwon room in Gwanak-gu, barely larger than a prison cell, staring at her phone screen where her mother's medical bills accumulate like fallen leaves. Her brother has sent 3 messages asking if everything is okay, if the money will arrive on time this month. She hasn't answered. What could she possibly say? She spent her last 2 days searching for work. Every restaurant in Gangnam has heard what happened at Hwaryohangogi. Some won't even let her finish explaining before they're shaking their heads. We can't hire someone involved in that situation, you understand. Others are more direct. We don't need troublemakers here. The word has spread through Seoul's service industry like wildfire through dry grass. Maria Nandale reported her workplace. Maria Nandale caused a scandal. Maria Nandale couldn't keep her head down and do her job like everyone else. Never mind the truth. Never mind the poisoned meat. In the brutal mathematics of survival, whistleblowers are liabilities, and loyalty, even loyalty to corruption, is valued more than integrity. She sits now in her tiny Goshiwon room in Sillimdong, a space barely large enough for a bed and a hot plate, staring at her phone screen. The numbers in her bank account mock her with their inadequacy. Enough for maybe 2 more months of rent. Enough for 1 more hospital payment. Then nothing. Her mother's last message sits unread in her cacao talk, sent 4 hours ago. How are you, Anak? The nurses say I'm getting stronger. Maria can't bring herself to open it. Can't bear to see those words. That hope. That trust. Knowing what she's done. What she's lost. What she's cost her family by choosing to save a stranger instead of protecting her own. The morning after the inspection, Maria had returned to Hwaryohangogi, hoping to collect her final paycheck, only to find the restaurant shuttered, yellow tape across the doors, official notices posted in the windows. The dream of splendid meat ended by the reality of rot. She'd stood there in the early morning light, still wearing yesterday's clothes because she'd been too exhausted to change, and felt the full weight of her decision settle onto her shoulders like a physical thing. No job, no income, visa dependent on employment, mother in the hospital, brother counting on university tuition. She'd returned to her shoebox apartment in Yeongdongpo, the kind of place where you can hear your neighbors' arguments and smell their dinner cooking through paper-thin walls, and cried until she had no tears left, only dry, gasping sobs that hurt her chest and changed nothing. That was 4 days ago. Now, Tuesday morning arrives wrapped in the kind of gray soul sky that matches her mood perfectly. Maria has spent the last 3 days sending out applications to every restaurant, cafe, and convenience store within subway distance. Her visa expires in 4 months. Without work, she has 60 days to leave the country or find new sponsorship. Her phone screen shows her bank balance, 340,000 won. Maybe 6 weeks of survival if she's careful. 4 weeks if her mother needs more treatment. She's sitting in the small goshiwon, a tiny room barely larger than a closet, that she calls home, staring at her phone and trying to decide which bill to pay first, when the email arrives. The subject line is in Korean and English. Employment opportunity. Urgent. Maria's finger hovers over the delete button. Scams, probably. She gets dozens of these now that she's filed for unemployment benefits. English teaching positions that require fees up front. Modeling opportunities that sound too good and too dangerous. Pyramid schemes dressed up as business opportunities for ambitious women. But something makes her open it. The email is brief, formal, and utterly bizarre. Ms. Maria Nundal, your presence is requested at Hwaryohan Gogi restaurant tomorrow at 10 a.m. for a matter of professional importance. Please bring identification. Regards, Seoul Business Restructuring Committee. Maria reads it 3 times, her heart hammering. She's sitting in her tiny goshiwon, a room barely large enough for a bed and a hot plate, staring at her phone screen as rain continues its relentless assault on Seoul. It's been 18 hours since the restaurant imploded. 18 hours since she watched her livelihood disappear in a cascade of official documents and damning evidence. She hasn't slept. Every time she closes her eyes, she sees Manager Choi's face draining of color, hears Inspector Yoon's calm voice listing violations, feels the weight of that blue napkin in her pocket like a stone that might drag her under. Her phone buzzes. A message from her mother. How are you, Anak? Feeling better today. Don't worry about the bills. Maria's vision blurs. Her mother doesn't know that her daughter just destroyed her own lifeline, doesn't know that the money might stop coming, doesn't know that her daughter chose a stranger's health over her own survival. She types back, I'm fine, Mama. Rest well. I love you. The lie tastes like ash. Sleep doesn't come that night. Maria lies in her tiny goshiwon room, barely larger than a closet, with walls so thin she can hear her neighbors breathing, and stares at the ceiling, watching shadows from passing cars paint temporary murals across the water-stained plaster. Her phone sits silent on the nightstand. No calls, no messages. No emergency job offers materializing from the universe to save her from the consequences of her own conscience. She thinks about calling her mother, then decides against it. What would she say? Iyama, I lost my job tonight because I saved a stranger from food poisoning. Her mother, who sacrificed everything to send her to Seoul, who believed in her daughter's ability to survive in this gleaming, merciless city. Maria stares at the ceiling of her goshiwon, a room barely large enough for a bed and a hot plate, walls so thin she can hear her neighbors breathing. This is what 6 months of savings bought her in Seoul. This, and the privilege of sending money home while eating instant ramyeon for dinner 3 nights a week. Her phone buzzes. A message from her brother. Mom asked about you today. She's worried you work too hard. I told her you're happy. Are you happy, 8? The words blur as fresh tears come. She types and deletes responses for 10 minutes before settling on. I'm okay. Send Mom my love. Sleep doesn't come that night. She lies on her narrow bed in the goshiwon, a tiny room barely larger than a closet, with walls so thin she can hear her neighbors breathing, and stares at the ceiling, replaying the evening in an endless loop. Every time she closes her eyes, she sees Manager Choi's face draining of color, Chef Park's hands trembling, Inspector Yoon's calm, implacable authority. and she sees Jun Hyuk, standing in the rain, hand over his heart, holding up a blue napkin like a flag of truce. Who is he? The question circles her mind like a bird trapped in a cage. Who has the power to summon government inspectors with a phone call? Who moves through Seoul accompanied by people who carry themselves like bodyguards or soldiers, or something in between? Who looks at a plate of poisoned food and responds not with anger, but with orchestrated systematic justice? She doesn't sleep that night. How could she? Every time she closes her eyes, she sees Manager Choi's face draining of color, hears Inspector Yoon's calm voice cataloging violations, feels the weight of that blue napkin in her pocket like a stone. Morning comes gray and reluctant, the rain finally exhausted into a dismal drizzle. Maria's phone buzzes at 6:47 a.m. A text from Minji, another server. Restaurant closed. Indefinitely. Manager arrested. What the hell happened? Maria stares at the message until the words blur. Arrested. The reality of it settles over her like a wet blanket. She should feel vindicated, triumphant. Instead, she feels hollow and terrified and utterly exhausted. She drags herself to Hwaryohan Gogi anyway, drawn by some masochistic need to see the aftermath with her own eyes. The restaurant looks different in daylight, smaller somehow, less grand. Yellow tape stretches across the entrance like caution lines around a crime scene. Through the windows she can see overturned chairs, abandoned tables, the detritus of interrupted meals. A hand touches her shoulder, and Maria jumps, spinning around with her heart in her throat. It's Inspector Yoon, looking tired but satisfied in the gray morning light. "Miss Nandale, I was hoping you'd come. I don't work here anymore," Maria stammers, though that's not exactly what she means to say. "No," Inspector Yoon agrees with a slight smile. "You don't. But you did the right thing. That takes courage most people don't have." Maria's eyes burn with sudden tears. "I lost my job. My visa depends on employment. My mother is in a hospital in Manila," Inspector Yoon finishes gently, "requiring expensive treatment. And you have a younger brother in his second year of university." "I know. We did our research." The words should feel invasive, but instead they feel like acknowledgement, like someone finally seeing the weight she's been carrying alone. Inspector Yoon reaches into her bag and pulls out a manila envelope. "This is for you, from someone who wanted to ensure your courage didn't come at an unbearable cost." Maria takes the envelope with trembling hands. Inside, she finds a formal letter, printed on expensive paper, bearing an official seal she doesn't recognize. The letterhead reads, Jungang Holdings Group. Her eyes scan the Korean text, struggling to comprehend. It's a job offer. Assistant manager position. At a restaurant. No, a restaurant group. Multiple locations. Salary that makes her current pay look like pocket change. Full benefits. Visa sponsorship. "I don't understand," she whispers. "You helped someone who needed help," Inspector Yoon says simply. "And sometimes, when you help the right person, they remember. They ensure that kindness isn't punished, but rewarded." Maria looks up from the letter, her vision swimming. The man. From last night. Who was he? Inspector Yoon's smile turns enigmatic. Someone who values loyalty and integrity above all else. Someone who remembers every kindness and every betrayal. Someone who... She pauses, choosing her words carefully, moves in circles where small gestures carry enormous weight. She pats Maria's shoulder once more. "Report to the address on that letter tomorrow morning at 9. And Miss Nandale, trust your instincts. They've served you well so far." Then she's gone, leaving Maria standing in front of the closed restaurant, clutching a piece of paper that somehow transforms her entire future, while rain begins to fall again, softer this time, like a benediction rather than an accusation. The address on the letter leads Maria to a building in Cheongdam-dong that looks like it was designed by someone who thought glass and steel could somehow express humility, but failed spectacularly. 40 stories of architectural ambition pierce the Seoul skyline, all sharp angles and reflective surfaces that catch the morning sun and throw it back at the city like a challenge. She stands across the street for 10 minutes, clutching her worn handbag, the one with the broken zipper she keeps meaning to replace but never does, and tries to convince herself she belongs here. Her reflection in a shop window shows a young woman in her best interview clothes. A black blazer purchased from a second-hand shop in Dongdaemun, pressed slacks that have seen better days, shoes polished until they almost hide their age. She looks like someone playing dress-up, trying to pass in a world that wasn't built for people like her. The lobby is all marble and hushed conversations, the kind of space where even footsteps feel like intrusions. A receptionist with perfect makeup and a smile that doesn't quite reach her eyes directs her to the 11th floor. Ms. Kang is expecting you. The elevator ride feels like ascending into another dimension. Each floor that passes takes her further from the Seoul she knows, the Seoul of Goshiwon rooms and convenience store meals and subway cars packed so tight you can't tell where your body ends and someone else's begins. This is the Seoul of the television dramas, the glossy magazines, the world she serves but never enters. Floor 11 opens into a space that barely resembles an office, more like a museum, or perhaps a very expensive living room. Abstract art on the walls, furniture that probably costs more than her yearly salary, windows offering views of the Han River that make the city look beautiful instead of crushing. Ms. Kang rises from behind a desk made of dark wood that gleams like still water. She's younger than Maria expected, mid-30s maybe, with the kind of effortless elegance that comes from never having worried about money. But her eyes are sharp, assessing, and not unkind. "Miss Nandale, please sit." She gestures to a chair that Maria is afraid to touch. "I've been very curious to meet you." Maria perches on the edge of the seat, back straight, hands folded in her lap, the posture of someone who's learned that taking up less space is safer. "Thank you for... I'm not sure what to thank you for, exactly." Ms. Kang's smile softens into something more genuine. "Let's start with the basics. I'm Kang Soo-jin, Director of Operations for Jungang Holdings. We own 17 restaurants across Seoul, Busan, and Jeju. The position we're offering you is real, legitimate, and comes with no strings attached beyond the expectation that you do your job well." "Why me?" The question escapes before Maria can stop it. Too blunt, too honest. "I'm nobody. You demonstrated integrity in a moment when it would have been much easier to look away." Ms. Kang interrupts gently. "Do you know how rare that is? Truly rare." She leans forward, and for the first time, Maria sees something beneath the professional polish, genuine respect. Most people would have served that meal and said nothing, would have told themselves it wasn't their problem, wasn't their responsibility. You didn't. That's exactly the kind of person we need. The words should feel reassuring, but Maria's stomach twists with unease. The man, from the restaurant. Who is he? Ms. Kang's expression shifts. Something subtle, like clouds passing across the moon. Someone who values loyalty above almost everything else. Someone who has learned, through difficult experience, that true character reveals itself in small moments, not grand gestures. That's not an answer. No, Ms. Kang agrees. It's not, but it's all the answer I can give you right now. What I can tell you is this. You're safe. Your job is real. Your visa will be sponsored, and you'll be compensated fairly for your work. The rest, she pauses, choosing her words carefully. The rest will become clear in time. Maria wants to push, to demand real answers, but something in Ms. Kang's expression stops her. Instead, she asks, "What if I say no? What if I don't want this job?" "Then you walk away, and we wish you well. No pressure, no consequences. You're not obligated to us in any way." Ms. Kang slides a folder across the desk. "But before you decide, look at this." Inside the folder are documents. Contracts, yes, but also something else. Bank transfer confirmations, dated yesterday. Large sums of money sent to Manila General Hospital, covering bills for her mother going back 3 months, plus 6 months paid in advance. Maria's hands begin to shake. "I can't. This is too much. I can't accept." "You already did," Ms. Kang says softly. "The moment you wrote that note. The moment you chose to act instead of remaining silent. This isn't charity, Maria. It's recognition. It's gratitude. And in our world, gratitude is currency." "Your world," Maria echoes, and the words taste like warning. "What world is that, exactly?" Ms. Kang stands and walks to the window, silhouetted against the Seoul skyline. When she speaks, her voice carries the weight of things unsaid. A world where power operates in channels most people never see, where decisions made in quiet rooms ripple outward in ways that change lives, where loyalty is rewarded and betrayal is remembered. The temperature in the room seems to drop. Maria thinks of Jun Hyuk's empty eyes, the 3 strangers who appeared like shadows, the cars lining up outside the restaurant, the inspection that came too perfectly timed to be coincidence. "He's not just a businessman, is he?" she asks quietly. Ms. Kang turns, and her expression is carefully neutral. "He's someone who operates in spaces between what's legal and what's necessary. Someone who has influence that extends beyond what appears on any official document. Someone who," she pauses, "values honor and integrity precisely because he operates in a world where both are rare." The implication hangs in the air, unspoken, but impossible to miss. Maria thinks of the dramas she's watched, the news stories she's read, the whispered conversations about chaebols and organized groups, and the invisible networks of power that run through Seoul like underground rivers. "You're asking me to work for someone connected to—" She can't quite say the words. "I'm offering you a legitimate job at a legitimate restaurant group," Ms. Kang corrects firmly. "What you're really asking is whether you can live with gratitude from someone whose methods you might not always approve of." Maria looks down at the folder, at the confirmation of her mother's paid medical bills, at the contract promising a salary that would change her family's entire trajectory. She thinks of her brother's university tuition, of her mother's medication, of the Goshiwon room she might finally escape. And she thinks of Manager Choi's face draining of color, of spoiled meat dressed up as luxury, of the moment she chose to write 4 words that changed everything. "If I accept this," she says slowly, "what happens next? You report to work on Monday. You learn your new position. You live your life." Ms. Kang returns to her desk. "And sometimes, very occasionally, you might be asked to exercise the same judgment you showed that night, to see things others miss, to speak up when silence would be easier. And if I see something I shouldn't, learn something I'm not supposed to know?" Ms. Kang's smile turns sad. "Then you'll have to decide, just like you did before, what kind of person you want to be. The difference is that this time you'll have support, protection, resources. You won't be alone." Maria stares at the contract for a long moment, feeling the weight of futures branching before her. One path leading back to precarity and struggle, the other into territory she doesn't fully understand but can't quite refuse. Finally, she picks up the pen Ms. Kang offers. "One condition," Maria says. "I need to know his name, the man from the restaurant. If I'm going to accept help from him, I at least deserve to know who he is." Ms. Kang considers this, then nods slowly. "Min Jun-hyuk. That's the name he uses in public anyway. And privately? Privately, he's someone who's been given many titles, most of them by people who either fear him or need him. But the one that matters most to you is the one you've already given him, the man you chose to save." Maria signs her name, the pen scratching across expensive paper, with the sound of doors closing and others opening. The sound of a future she's chosen, even though she doesn't fully understand its shape. Outside the window, Seoul sprawls in every direction, millions of lives intersecting in patterns too complex to map. And somewhere in that vast city, a man named Min Jun-hyuk carries a blue napkin in his pocket, and Maria realizes with sudden crystalline clarity that her life has become entangled with forces she's only beginning to comprehend. The first week at her new position passes in a blur of overwhelming competence and underlying unease. Maria's new restaurant, Seolung Dining, a sleek establishment in Gangnam that caters to business executives and wealthy families, is everything Hwaryohan Gogi pretended to be. The kitchen is spotless, temperature logs are meticulously maintained, and every piece of meat is tagged with dates and origins that can be traced back to specific farms. The staff treats her with a respect that feels surreal, calling her Manager Maria and actually listening when she speaks. But beneath the surface of this new life, something darker swims. It starts small, a feeling at the back of her neck when she walks home at night, like invisible eyes tracking her movements through the neon-lit streets of Seoul. She tells herself it's paranoia, the natural consequence of everything that's happened. But paranoia doesn't explain the same black car she sees parked near her Goshiwon 3 nights in a row. Different drivers, but the same watching presence. On Tuesday evening, as she closes up the restaurant, she notices a man sitting alone at the cafe across the street. He's been there since 7, nursing the same cup of coffee, his eyes occasionally drifting to Seolung Dining's entrance. When she exits, he folds his newspaper with deliberate slowness and walks in the opposite direction, but not before she catches him speaking quietly into his phone. Wednesday brings a phone call that disconnects the moment she answers. Then another. Then 3 more throughout the day, each one silent, except for the sound of breathing on the other end, measured and patient, like someone waiting for something. On Thursday, she finds her locker at work slightly ajar, nothing missing, nothing disturbed, but the lock she always secures carefully now hangs open, as though someone wanted her to know they'd been there. She mentions it to no one, but spends the rest of her shift feeling exposed, vulnerable, like standing naked in a spotlight. Ms. Kang calls her on Friday morning, her voice professionally cheerful. "How are you settling in?" "Fine," Maria lies, gripping her phone tighter than necessary. "Everything's good. And you haven't noticed anything unusual?" The question lands like a stone dropped into still water. Maria's breath catches. "Should I be noticing something unusual?" There's a pause, just long enough to confirm Maria's worst fears. "We're handling a situation. Nothing for you to worry about. But if you see anything that concerns you, call me immediately. Day or night." "What kind of situation?" "The kind that occasionally arises when someone disrupts certain arrangements," Ms. Kang says carefully. Manager Choi had connections, associates who weren't pleased with how things unfolded. They're being reminded of appropriate boundaries. The words are diplomat speak for something far uglier. Maria thinks of the man at the cafe, the disconnected calls, her violated locker. "They're watching me. They were watching you." Past tense. By tomorrow, they'll understand that continuing to do so would be inadvisable. Ms. Kang's voice hardens almost imperceptibly. "You're under protection, Maria. That means something in this city. Trust me." But trust is exactly what Maria's running short on. She ends the call feeling more unsettled than before, and spends the rest of the day jumping at shadows, seeing threats in every unfamiliar face. That night, she takes a different route home, cutting through side streets and doubling back twice to see if anyone follows. The rain has returned, turning Seoul into a watercolor painting of blurred lights and indistinct shapes. Perfect weather for paranoia to flourish. She's 2 blocks from her Goshiwon when she sees the figure, standing beneath a broken streetlight, half hidden by shadow, wearing a dark hooded jacket that conceals their face, not moving, not pretending to be doing anything else, just standing there, watching. Maria's heart slams against her ribs. Her hand fumbles for her phone, fingers clumsy with fear. Should she run? Call Ms. Kang? Scream? The figure takes a step forward, into the edge of the streetlight's glow. Still too dark to see clearly, but Maria can make out the outline of a man. Tall, broad-shouldered, with the stillness of someone comfortable with violence. She's frozen, every survival instinct screaming contradictory advice. Run, don't run, move, stay still, fight, submit. The figure reaches into his jacket. Maria's breath stops entirely. This is how it ends, she thinks with strange clarity. This is the price of that blue napkin, of those 4 words, of choosing morality over invisibility. A dark street in Seoul, rain falling like tears, her mother never knowing what really happened. But instead of a weapon, the figure withdraws an envelope. He takes another step forward, and Maria finally sees his face, weathered, middle-aged, with eyes that hold no malice, only weariness. He extends the envelope toward her, his movements slow and deliberate, like approaching a frightened animal. "From Manager Min," he says quietly, his voice rough but not unkind. "He wanted you to have this, to understand." Maria doesn't move, doesn't breathe. The man sets the envelope on a nearby bench, takes several steps back, and disappears into the shadows between buildings with the practiced efficiency of someone who's made an art of vanishing. For a long moment, Maria stands paralyzed in the rain, staring at the envelope like it might contain a bomb or a curse or some other form of deferred destruction. The water soaks through her jacket, her hair, turning her clothes heavy and cold, but she can't make herself move. Finally, with trembling hands, she retrieves the envelope. It's waterproof, expensive paper, unmarked except for her name written in precise handwriting. Inside, a single photograph and a handwritten note. The photograph shows a younger version of Manager Choi standing with 3 other men outside what looks like a warehouse. They're all smiling, arms around each other's shoulders, the kind of casual friendship photograph that would seem innocent, except for one detail. In the background, barely visible, are stacks of boxes marked with a pharmaceutical company's logo, and in the corner, a date stamp, 15 years ago. The note is brief, written in Korean with English translation below. They're not watching because they're angry about the restaurant. They're watching because you're connected to me now, and they want to understand what that means. They're trying to determine if you're a threat or an asset. The photograph shows what Choi was before the restaurant, part of a distribution network for pharmaceuticals that weren't supposed to reach the street. He thought changing industries meant escaping his past. He was wrong. You exposed him not just for spoiled meat, but for who he used to be. Some people are grateful, others are not. Stay alert. Stay safe. You did nothing wrong. MJ. Maria reads the note 3 times in the rain, watching the ink blur slightly at the edges despite the waterproof paper. The implications unfold in her mind like a map of connections she never wanted to see. Drugs, distribution networks, organized operations, and somehow, impossibly, she stumbled into the middle of it all because she wrote 4 words on a blue napkin. She looks up at the Seoul skyline, at the millions of lit windows representing millions of lives, and realizes with sick certainty that her own window is now visible to people she can't see, people who are deciding, even now, whether she's valuable or expendable, protected or vulnerable. The rain continues falling, each drop feeling less like water and more like the weight of consequences she's only beginning to understand. When she finally reaches her goshiwon, soaked and shivering, she finds something else that makes her blood run cold. Tucked under her door, another envelope. This one unmarked, cheap paper, nothing like the one from Junhyuk's messenger. Inside, a single photograph. Maria serving Junhyuk on that rainy night, captured from an angle that suggests someone was watching from the kitchen, and written across the back in crude handwriting. You changed the game. Now you're part of it. The photograph burns in Maria's pocket for 3 days before she finds the courage to do anything about it. She carries it everywhere. To work, to the convenience store, to the tiny bathroom down the hall from her goshiwon, where she brushes her teeth and tries not to think about the meaning of threats delivered through cheap paper and cheaper implications. The weight of it feels disproportionate to its physical mass, like carrying a stone that grows heavier with each passing hour. Mrs. Kang calls twice. Maria doesn't answer. What would she say? Someone's threatening me and I don't know if I should trust your protection or if that protection is what's putting me in danger. The words tangle in her throat, unspoken and unspeakable. On the 4th day, Junhyuk returns. No warning, no appointment. He simply appears at Seollung Dining during the quiet hour between lunch and dinner, when the restaurant holds its breath before the evening rush. Maria is checking inventory in the back when one of the servers, Jiwon, a college student saving for study abroad, pokes her head through the doorway with an expression caught between awe and terror. Manager Maria? There's someone here to see you. The way she says someone contains volumes of unspoken information. Maria's hand still on the clipboard she's holding. Her heart begins that familiar hammering rhythm that's become her constant companion these past weeks. Who? He didn't give a name, but he asked for you specifically. And Manager Maria? Jiwon's voice drops to a whisper. There are 3 other people with him. They're just standing there, not ordering, not sitting, just standing. Of course there are. Maria sets down the clipboard with hands that want to shake, but refuse to give her fear that satisfaction. She smooths her uniform, a simple black dress that the restaurant provides, far more elegant than anything she owned before this job, and walks through the kitchen with the deliberate calm of someone approaching an execution they've already accepted. The dining room is nearly empty, just 2 tables occupied, a pair of businesswomen discussing contracts over coffee, and an elderly couple sharing a late lunch with the comfortable silence of decades together. They don't notice the shift in atmosphere, the way the air has grown dense and charged, like the moment before lightning strikes. But Maria notices. Junhyuk sits at the same corner table he occupied that night at Hwaryo Gogi, as far from the other diners as possible, positioned so he can see both the entrance and the kitchen. The symmetry is intentional, she realizes. A recreation. A callback to the moment that changed everything. He's dressed differently today. No worn coat, no appearance of desperation. Instead, he wears a perfectly tailored suit in charcoal gray, the kind that whispers wealth without shouting it. His hair is styled, his face clean-shaven, and the empty eyes she remembers now hold something else. Awareness, calculation, and perhaps a trace of the same weariness she saw in that messenger's face. The three people with him position themselves exactly as that first night's trio did, creating an invisible perimeter, a zone of safety or threat depending on which side you stand. Maria approaches the table with her server's smile firmly in place. That mask of professional courtesy she's worn for so long, it feels like her real face. "Good afternoon. Welcome to Seolung Dining, Miss Nandale." His voice is the same, quiet, controlled, containing depth she's only beginning to fathom. "Thank you for seeing me. I know I should have called ahead. You didn't have my number." The words come out more sharply than intended. "No," he agrees. "I didn't. That was intentional. I wanted you to have the choice of whether to know me beyond that one night, whether to accept what I offered through Ms. Kang, or to walk away entirely. I signed the contract." She's not sure if it sounds like an accusation or a confession. "Yes, and you've been excellent at your work. The reports I receive say you're transforming the management culture here, teaching by example, showing that integrity and efficiency aren't mutually exclusive." He gestures to the empty chair across from him. "Please, sit. I'm not here as a customer today." Maria remains standing. "Then what are you here as?" Something flickers across his face. Respect, maybe, or surprise that she's pushing back. "As someone who owes you an explanation. And an apology." "For what?" "For putting you in danger by helping you. For not anticipating that my gratitude would make you visible to people who—" He pauses, choosing words carefully. "Who operate in spaces where visibility is often fatal." The photograph feels like it's burning through her pocket, through her dress, through her skin. She pulls it out and places it on the table between them. "Like whoever took this?" Junhyuk picks up the photograph, and for the first time since she's seen him, his control slips. His jaw tightens almost imperceptibly. His fingers, holding the cheap paper, go white at the knuckles. When he speaks, his voice carries an edge cold enough to freeze blood. "Where did you get this?" "Under my door, 4 days ago." He studies the photograph, not looking at the image itself, which he presumably knows, but at the paper quality, the printing method, searching for clues in the physical object. Then he turns it over, reads the message on the back, and something dangerous passes through his eyes. "I need you to trust me," he says quietly. "Can you do that? I don't even know you." "No, you don't. But you knew enough to save me when you had every reason not to. When saving me cost you everything you'd worked for. That suggests your instincts about people are good." He sets the photograph down, slides it back across the table toward her. "So trust your instincts now. Am I someone who would allow harm to come to you?" Maria looks at him, really looks, past the expensive suit and the bodyguards and the aura of controlled danger, and sees something unexpected. Genuine concern. Not the calculated concern of someone protecting an asset, but the raw concern of someone who feels responsible, guilty even. "No," she admits. "I don't think you would." "Then sit, please, and let me explain what's really happening here." She sits, and the moment she does, one of his people, the woman in the severe suit, moves to the restaurant's entrance and flips the sign from open to closed. The businesswomen look up, confused, but before they can protest, the woman speaks to them in low, firm tones. They gather their things and leave without argument. The elderly couple receives the same treatment, though more gently. Within 3 minutes, the restaurant is empty, except for Maria, Junhyuk, and his 3 shadows. "I'm not who you think I am," Junhyuk begins, and Maria almost laughs at the inadequacy of the statement. "Or rather, I'm exactly who you think I am, but for different reasons than you imagine. You're connected to organized groups," Maria says flatly, "to networks that operate outside the law. Manager Choi was involved in something illegal, and when I exposed him, I accidentally exposed people who wanted to stay hidden." Partially correct. Junhyuk leans forward, and for the first time, she sees exhaustion in his face, the kind that suggests months or years of insufficient sleep and excessive burden. "I do operate in spaces between legal and necessary, but I'm not what you think. I'm not someone who hurts people for profit. I'm someone who," he struggles with the words, "who tries to clean up messes that official channels can't or won't address." "That's convenient," Maria says, surprised by her own bitterness. "Everyone thinks they're the good guy. I don't think I'm good." His voice carries absolute certainty. "I know exactly what I am, but I also know that when I found out about Choi's operation, Not just the spoiled meat, but the pharmaceutical distribution he was still connected to, the money he was laundering through the restaurant. I had a choice: report it officially and watch it disappear into bureaucratic delays, or handle it efficiently. And the photograph is from someone who lost money when Choi's operation collapsed. Someone who wants to know if you're a threat or just collateral damage. Someone who's testing boundaries. He pulls out his phone, types something quickly. By tomorrow morning, they'll understand that testing you is the same as testing me, and that would be inadvisable. Maria wants to feel relieved. Instead, she feels trapped. So I'm protected because I'm yours now? Is that it? I belong to you because you paid my mother's hospital bills? No. The word comes out sharp, almost angry. You're protected because you deserve protection, because what you did that night, warning a stranger, risking everything for someone you didn't know, that matters. In a world full of people who look away, who choose safety over conscience, you chose differently. That's rare. That's valuable. And I protect valuable things. He reaches into his jacket. Maria flinches involuntarily and withdraws something small. He places it on the table between them. The blue napkin, carefully preserved, folded exactly as she'd folded it. The words, "Please don't eat this. Trust me," still visible despite the passage of time. "I carry this with me," Junhyuk says softly, "as a reminder that integrity still exists, that kindness isn't extinct, that sometimes, in the darkest moments, a stranger's courage can save your life in ways that have nothing to do with food poisoning." Maria stares at the napkin, her vision blurring with unexpected tears. "I was just trying to do the right thing. I know, and doing the right thing shouldn't come with death threats. So I'm making sure it doesn't." He stands, and his people move instantly into formation around him. "You're not part of my world, Maria. You're not obligated to me. You're simply under my protection. There's a difference." He walks toward the door, then pauses. "One more thing. The person who left that photograph, they'll receive a visitor tonight. A conversation will happen. And tomorrow, you'll find a different photograph under your door. One that will make it very clear why continuing to threaten you would be a mistake they can't afford to make." "What kind of photograph?" His smile is cold and doesn't reach his eyes. "The kind that reminds people why some debts should never be called in, and some people should never be threatened. Don't worry. No one will be hurt. Just educated." Then he's gone, and Maria sits alone in the empty restaurant, staring at a blue napkin that somehow bridged two worlds that were never meant to touch, wondering if she's been saved or simply transferred from one kind of danger to another. Outside, through the windows, she watches a black car pull away into Seoul traffic, carrying a man who protects her for reasons she doesn't fully understand, using methods she's terrified to imagine. And for the first time since that rainy night, Maria realizes that gratitude and fear can exist in the same space, that salvation and threat can wear the same face, and that the line between hero and something darker is sometimes as thin as 4 words written on a napkin by hands that refuse to stop shaking. In the end, what remained was not the rain, nor the silence, nor the shadows that moved beneath the surface of that ordinary night. What remained was a choice, a quiet, fragile choice made by someone who believed her gesture would disappear the moment it left her hands. But it didn't. It became the hinge on which an entire life turned. And now, as you sit with this story, you must ask yourself, if you were standing where she stood, carrying her fears, her doubts, her impossible responsibilities, would you have had the courage to do the same? Because sometimes the world shifts in moments no one else sees. Sometimes it is the smallest act, whispered into existence, that reveals the truth hidden behind everything we think we understand. And when the truth finally steps into the light, it does not ask permission. It asks character. It asks heart. It asks who we are when no one is watching. So take this story with you. Let it echo in the quiet hours. Let it ask you, quietly but insistently, what would you risk to protect a stranger? And what would you do if the consequences of your kindness grew larger than you ever imagined?